Welcome to our tutorial for Complete Beginners. In this tutorial we're going to look at making your first ever graphic in Photoshop. We're going to make a sale graphic like this one here, and you'll find the monster image ready for you to download below. In case you're wondering why we're using a graphic like this and not a photograph to work on for our first ever project, the reason for this is that we can all work along together and follow the same instructions with this. With photos, every photo is a little different, and there are different nuances, different things that we have to do. Here I can still show you navigation of Photoshop. I can show you some of the key tools. I can show you ways to manipulate and adjust your images, but we'll all be following the same process. And at the end of it, you will have a graphic like this, or you can customize it in a variety of ways, which you can use to put on Instagram or social media or onto your blog to promote a sale or to promote some of your projects. Right, so if you would like to download the monster graphic and open up Photoshop, load your monster into Photoshop, and we'll be ready to go. Once you've opened your monster graphic, you'll notice that it's a PNG file, so we have a transparent background, and you'll notice that the little monster has loaded onto layer 0. The first thing that we're going to do is to check the size of the image. So if you go to the menu bar along the top, image size, and you'll see that this image is 2250 pixels by 1800. I'm going to leave it at this size at the moment because we can cut it down afterwards. Normally I would probably resize an image right at the very end. However, I'm checking the size of the image now because if it was too small or if there was a problem with it, I might want to choose another image to work with. So we can just cancel that now. The first thing I'm going to do is make a small adjustment to the depth of colour on our little monster. And the way I'm going to do this is add an adjustment layer. Now, if you saw my first tutorial, which was an overview of Photoshop, you'll remember that I said that by using adjustment layers, your layer changes the look of the original image, but doesn't change the original image itself. You can turn the layer on or off, and your original image will be exactly the same. So let's have a look and see what I'm talking about. Down here at the bottom of the layers window, by the way, if you can't see the layers window in your Photoshop window, go to Window, Layers, click on Layers, and the layer window will open. If it is docked to one side, for example, if it's docked like this, you can just simply click on it and pull it across to a place within your workspace where it's convenient for you to find it. Right, so we're going to apply an adjustment layer. So click on here, and these are the options that we have available. There are a number of ways of changing the depth and the colour of an image to lighten it or brighten it. The way I like to work, and the one that we're working with today, is levels. So if you want to click on levels, the levels, I'm just going to pull this over here so we can see it easily. Here are the levels options. If I move the slider bars from left to right, right to left, you'll see that it adjusts our image. That way lightens it. This way darkens it. You can move the one in the middle, which will create subtle differences. I'm going to darken this image slightly. Now you can see that it's created a new adjustment layer over the top of my original image. Let me just darken that just a little bit more. Okay. Move this over to one side, and you can see that if I switch that off, you can see that the original image is exactly the same as it was before. Put the adjustment back on again, and it's just a little bit darker. If I wanted to darken that some more, I can double click on the little icon here, and I can just move it across to darken the image, add a little bit of depth to it, and close it. Right, okay, now if you go to the top left hand side of the screen, you'll see that we have an option here called Auto Select, and I have mine ticked. If you check Auto Select like I've done, then it means that when you click on an element within your graphic, you will select it, you will select that layer, and you can then move it around your workspace. I find that quite a convenient way of working, particularly if I have a lot of graphics or a lot of elements within an image. Now I think I am going to crop this image to make it a square, because I think that we'll be making a square promotional graphic. This is really easy. Now I'm using an older version of Photoshop, so yours might look a little bit different to this, but the functionality is exactly the same. The crop tool is over here on the left hand side. Click on the crop tool, and you'll see up in the top here we have an option to set the dimensions of our crop. I'm making mine 1 by 1. Now it says 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, but just ignore that for this purpose. Yours, just set it to 1 to 1, it'd be the dimensions. And then I can now drag this over my image and it will crop to an exact square. I press enter, my image is cropped. Again, I go back up and I'm going to change to the move tool, the select tool, and click on my little monster, and I can move her around. Right, I want to add a little bit of drop shadow to this monster to make her stand out a bit and make her pop from the page. Again, this is very easy to do, and it's simply a case of making sure that the layer is selected that you want to add the drop shadow to. Go down to the bottom here, effects, and select drop shadow. The drop shadow window will open, and I'm going to just resize mine slightly because I'm working on a small computer. No, I'm not. Okay, I will just move it to one side then. And I have the preview box checked so I can see what effect the drop shadow has before I actually click to save it. I make my drop shadow very small and very subtle because I don't want a great big dark shadow behind my monster. I just want a little bit of depth so that it stands out from the page, and I've set it to 5 pixels. And that's absolutely perfect for me. You might want more or less. Try different things and see what it looks like. I'm going to press OK. Now, as we've said before, that I can click effects on and off, and while I've applied an effect to this image, it hasn't actually permanently affected this image. I can turn it on and off as I like. I'm now going to add a coloured bar at the bottom of this image to make the text really stand out. And the way I'm going to do this is add a smart object. I am selecting from the left hand side, from the tools on the left hand side, you'll see that there's a little square icon here. I'm going to click on that and then drag across the bottom of my graphic, and it's created a square. Now you'll notice that it's created it above the layer that I was last working on. So in this instance, it's created a graphic above my monster. Well, obviously I don't want that. So I just click on that, drag it down under the monster, and it's arranged it accordingly. Now, I don't want this bar to be white. I want it to be a colour that complements my little monster here. So all I need to do is double click on the white, and up comes my colour picker. I can change this bar to any colour by using the colour picker, using the slider, Or what I want to do, I want to make it so it's a similar tone to my monster. So I can use the colour picking icon to pick up a colour from my monster. I'm picking up a dark, I'm going to pick up a darkish purple. I got one here. And then just to make it a little bit darker, I can adjust it so it's darker using the slider. And okay. Right, okay, before I go any further, I want to add a background to this image. So I'm going to use just a plain white colour, but you could actually put in some decorative, if you had a piece of textured paper or a pattern or something, you could try that. The easiest way to add a colour is to go again to our adjustment layer and select solid colour. Select solid colour, picking on white, and OK. And again, the colour fill has gone to the top, so just pull that down, and it's now the last layer on my graphic. I'm going to use the text tool from the left hand side to add some text to my image. So that's just simply a case of clicking on the text tool to select it, and clicking on the image where I want to add the text, and typing away. I'm just going to add the name of my store, so make for business. Now you'll see that text is tiny, so I can highlight the text, and then I can use the sizer up here. I'm going to select 60, no, 72, still too small, so I can actually manually type in, let's try 150, and that's made a better size. Now you'll see that I've got a white, my text is white on the purple background, which makes it really stand out. If I wanted to change on that, I go over here to the les options, double click here, and I've highlighted my text. I do want to make that B a capital B, so I'll just quickly change that. If I wanted to change the colour of the text, I could just use this colour option at the top, and I can make it any colour that I want, but I'm going to go back and make it white. We're now going to add some more text to our graphic, and I want to put something like, we're having a monster sale. So we select the text tool again from over here, text type tool, and I'm just going to type the words here. So we're having and you'll see that I'm typing in white on a white background. So if I just highlight this text, and I can change up here, I can select any different colour that I want. I'm going to use grey, a dark grey, charcoal grey, because I think it looks a little more elegant than a plain black on a white background. So select, I've got my font here. Now, if I wanted to, this is obviously too small, so one way of changing that is to, as we saw earlier, to type in a number or select a number from here. Another way to do this is actually to use free transform. So we go to Edit, Free Transform, and you'll see that we've now got an edit box around the text or any element that we were looking to transform. The key here is you can use this to make something bigger or smaller, and the trick is to hold down the shift key when you adjust the size. If you hold down the shift key, it will adjust the size of the element proportionately. If you don't hold down the shift key, it will adjust the size disproportionately. So I'm going to hold down the shift key, and I'm going to drag one of these boxes to make this text a little bigger. Okay, and I'm happy with that, so I'm going to press enter to accept that. So we're having and it's going to be monster sale. So being happy with the we're having with the font, size, color, and style, I'm going to go to the move select tool again. I'm going to click on the we're having and I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and this will duplicate this. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, it will duplicate this, I can then drag, and I will have made a copy of we're having Okay, so obviously I don't want our graphic to say we're having So if I double click on here, I'll highlight that text. I can just backspace to get rid of it, and it's going to be a monster sale! Exclamation mark. Ordinarily, I would probably have put that the word sale into caps or into a bigger text or something like this. However, because I'd want it to jump out at the reader, and I'd be wanting them to say, hey, look at what we're doing. However, here we're using the word monster is the word that's going to be grabbing their attention. I'm going to move sale, click on sale so that I've highlighted it, and I'm moving it over to the other side where I think it will go. Now I want to add the word monster, so I select the type tool again and type the word monster. I'm going to type it in caps because I want this word to jump out. Okay, and I want to change the typeface. I want something that's big and bold and is going to say look at me. So I could use something like this, and I'm going to use edit free transform to manually adjust the size so that I don't have to do any guesswork. So remembering to hold down the shift key so that I change the size proportionately, I'm going to now adjust the size of monster. Okay, and that's fine. I'm going to press enter to accept it. Change back to the move tool, and that looks good, but I want to change the color of monster. So I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to make it another purple. This time I might make it a lighter purple. So I've chosen a color on the monster, and okay. Right, okay, so we're having a monster sale. I want to put a little bit more detail about what the sale is, maybe add a coupon code or something. If you want to add blocks of text in Photoshop, and the same with Illustrator actually, there's a very easy way to do this so that you don't have to keep putting in line breaks and returns and things. You can use the type tool to create a text box. So you just use the type tool, drag it over where you want to put the box. Now, if you I'm typing. Let's change that font to. I was using Roboto before, so let's change the font to what I was using, and there we go. So I'm just typing rubbish here, as you can see, but it will automatically wrap around the text box. So it's a really easy way to finish or to add your text and to keep it neat within the text box. So in the text box, you can add the details about your sale. You could add your website address, you could put a coupon code, put anything that you want to put. I just appear to have put rubbish, but that's fine for this. Okay, and I've selected the move tool again. Everything is now looking pretty good. I've got a cute little monster here, and remember, all of these layers can be switched on and off, so my original monster stays unchanged. What I will do though is show you how I could really quickly adjust the colours of this monster. First of all, let's save, because we haven't saved yet, and I ought to show you how to save, because as good practice you ought to save things regularly when you're working in Photoshop. So File, I'm going to save as, because I'm going to save a new copy of this. Save as, Little Monster Make for Business 1. I'm saving it as a PSD file, which is the Photoshop file. This will save all of the layers and everything so that I can then edit the image at a later date. If I wanted to, I could save the image as a JPEG or a PNG file or a Photoshop PDF. If I saved it as a JPEG or a PNG file, it would flatten the image. It would make all of the layers flatten into one, and this would mean that it would be impossible for me to then go in and tweak or edit any of the adjustments that I've made so far. Right, so I'm saving it as a PSD file. Save. I'm working on a Spanish operating system, which is why some of my commands are in Spanish. And okay. So I said that now we were going to look at a quick and easy way of changing the colours. I'm going to use a new adjustment layer, and this time I'm going to select hue and saturation. If I'd wanted to create a black and white, if I'd wanted to create a black and white version, I could simply have selected the black and white option here. I want to change the colours, so I'm going to choose hue and saturation, and you'll see here I have a slider bar that goes left to right, offering me different options. Now, the best way to show you this, or the best way for you to get experience of this, is to actually try it. And a monster is absolutely perfect, because no one's going to say that a monster shouldn't be green or shouldn't be blue. You can change and try different things and see what you like. This will change everything, because we've got this adjustment layer at the top. It will adjust all of the layers underneath it. So we're adjusting, we've got a green monster, now we've got a blue monster right the way through, and that we can make a little green monster. I like the blue, so we're going back to the blue monster with pink toenails. I could also adjust the saturation, so the depth of the colour. This way it looks a little bit grey and washed out. This way the colour is more vivid. Let's put it back towards the middle. And lightness and darkness. It's handy if you want to adjust the lightness and darkness of a photograph. So I think that's fine, and as I've said, if I turn that off, we're back to our original image. So I haven't actually changed anything. I've just applied an adjustment layer. So that's it. I'm happy with that. It's a neat little graphic. I mean, that obviously I would go ahead and add some more relevant text if I was going to use this in real life. Make sure that you've got your website address or your Etsy store address. But I've shown you a few of the key tools. I've shown you how to use the auto select here, and to click on an element within your image to move it around. I've shown you how to use the text tool. I've shown you how you can use the transform tool, edit, free transform to transform an element. Remember to hold down the shift key when you drag it, so it increases the size proportionately. I've shown you how to duplicate an element within your graphic by holding down the Alt key and then dragging, and you will have created a duplicate of that element. I've shown you how to save. And hopefully, most importantly, I've actually shown you how the layers panel works, and how you can continue adding layers and layers and layers and adjusting your image without worrying that you will have destroyed your original image, or that actually what you liked was an effect that you'd achieved 3 or 4 steps ago, but you can't remember how to get back to it. You just simply switch off a few of your layers. Talking about going backwards, in Photoshop, if you make a mistake, you could obviously use the short key, which is Control and Z to undo, or if you're using a Mac, use the Command Z to undo, or Edit, step backwards, and that will actually undo the step that you've just done. Right, okay, so we looked here at how to make an image. So I suggest now, if you want to play around a bit more and perhaps add some more text or change the colour of the monster or do whatever you like, and then File, Save As, save your PSD file, your Photoshop file, so that you can change it again if you want to, and save it as a JPEG. So you have a graphic that you can use to put onto social media. If you want to make the graphic smaller, so it will load quickly into social media, image size, you could change it to 1000 or 640 or something, and save that file. Right, okay. The tools that we've covered here and the outline that we've covered here, we've used to create a monster graphic. We could actually use some of those basic tools to work on a photograph. And if you bear with me, I'm going to open a photograph of some earrings, and I'll show you how we use exactly the same tools to work with a photograph. Okay, here's a photo of a pair of earrings, and as you can see that the photo is it's a bit dark, it's a bit gloomy, and it's not particularly good. So using some of the same techniques that we use to make the monster graphic, we can start to adjust this photo and perhaps make it a little bit more vibrant. Right, so we're going to create a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to use levels to brighten this photo. So levels. If you remember when we were making the monster graphic, we pull these to the left and to the right, and it adjusts the lightness and darkness of our image. I'm moving this bar to lighten it, and I'm going to lighten it a little bit more. This photo isn't a very good photo, and Photoshop is an excellent tool, but it's not going to turn a poor photo into an excellent photo. It will turn a poor photo into an okay photo. It will turn an okay photo into a great photo, but it's not going to turn a poor photo into a wow, that's fabulous. But it will improve it, and that we've improved it a little bit already because we've added, just by using levels, we've just brought a little bit of light into this image. So we'll say okay to that. And maybe I might want to think about adding a little bit of perhaps a little bit more colour, a little bit more saturation into it. So I'm going to choose hue and saturation. When we made the monster, we changed the colour of the monster. I don't really want to change the colour of my earrings, although it's probably quite a handy way to see what they would look like in different colour combinations. But let's put it back to the middle because I don't want to I don't want to change it, but I do want to add just a little bit more saturation to it, because when I used levels to lighten it, I took out some of the depth of colour. So let's just add a little bit of that back in. It doesn't need to be very much, but I don't know if you can see. Let's move it back again. The effect is subtle, and when you're working with Photoshop and when you're adjusting photos, subtle is good. You don't want to look at it and go, wow. You want to look at it and go, and I don't want to do anything else to the lightness, but I could. But as you can see, it just makes it look washed out. So I'll put it back to where it was. So that's a slight adjustment that I've made there. There are other ways that I could adjust this this photo. I could consider altering the exposure a bit, and you'll see that I can make something look overexposed if that's the look that I want, which it obviously isn't, or I can make something look dark and underexposed. Well, you know, that's not what I'm after either. So let's just add a little bit of light into it, and that will do. Let's just reduce some of that a bit because it's gone a bit too overexposed. Right, okay. So let's switch that off. I mean, that you can see that the biggest effect that I've had was adding the first levels layer. This is added, I don't know if you can see, a very subtle difference with a change of colour, and the exposure really, again, another subtle change. Now let's say that I want to crop this image. It's not quite it's not quite centered, so I use the crop tool, again the same tool that we used when we cropped the monster image. I don't want it to be 1 centimeter. I want this to be a free crop. I want to be able to crop it by eye. So I'm going to take everything out of that dimension box, and I'm just going to drag the crop tool, and I'm going to look at it by eye and adjust it. As I said before, I'm using an older version of Photoshop on this particular computer, which is why it might not look quite the same as yours, but the functionality is the same. So I think that is fine. So I'm just going to enter to make that crop. And if I wanted to add a watermark or put my store name or type a little sales message or something, I would use the text tool and go ahead and add that. So some of the basic tips and tricks that we learned from making the monster graphic, you'll see that you can apply to photos, but we're really just scratching the surface of photo manipulation using Photoshop. But I just wanted to show you something so that you could get going and practice a few things on your photos before really getting down into more detail later. Okay, so that's it for now. Okay, so all that remains now is for me to say thank you very much for watching.